What's up, party people? We are back and we have an extra juicy, extra exciting, extra, certainly very extra episode for you today about sexting with my friend Tristan. In this episode, Tristan shares some pretty interesting research around the positive correlation between not only sexting and quality of sex within relationships, but also sexting and holistic relationship satisfaction. That is good to know. That is very good to know. She'll share more on that in a few minutes. Before we dive in, I want to let you know that my membership community, Magnetics Plus, is open. We have been doing a low-key, small rollout for this, so it is now open. Open. So we are inviting in new members via an interview process. As a member of Magnetics Plus, you get access to a private membership portal where you can connect with and support the other members who are learning alongside you. I also go live regularly in that private portal, so that's really content straight from the source, so you get it raw. That's really where I share the unfiltered, intimate content. You also get access to a growing library of resources, which I am calling the Chamber of Secrets, which includes all kinds of private podcasts, private conversations, research, etc., that I will be continuing to add to. And you get access to a live monthly coaching call, group coaching call, where you get coaching directly from me. So if continuing learning around dating, relationships, sex, sexuality, quality of life sounds appealing to you and you would like a peer group to hold you accountable, support you, just be a part of, I fully invite you to shoot Jazz an email at hello@coraboydcoaching.com and she will set up an interview to see if it feels like a good mutual fit. That being said, on to the sexting. Relax. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Welcome to Pillow Talk Radio, the most delicious place to be. On this podcast, we explore how to create more connection, possibility, romance, and magic in love and in life. I'm your host and relationship specialist, Cora Boyd. Are you with me? What's up? My friend Tristan Thibodeau is here. She is a wild sex and intimacy coach and just a shining star of a human. So I'm so excited to have her because we're going to talk about sexting.
Ooh, yes, we are.
Ooh, yes, we are.
Ooh.
So Tristan, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're based, what you do in the world.
Yes, I am in H-Town. I'm in Houston, Texas right now. I've been a bit of a nomad moving all over the country in the past 4 to 6 years. From Ohio, moved to Arizona, now I'm in Texas. Who knows where I'll go next? But I help people to feel super confident and self-expressed and authentic in their sex lives and in their relationships by helping them just to tap into their desire more and feel confident and happy and comfortable expressing that and really owning it as their right.
I love that. Just as a little warm-up, can you tell us about your first crush?
Oh my gosh, what a fun question. Okay, first crush. I think it was second grade. Second grade, a boy named Blake.
Ooh, Blake.
I don't know, should I say his last name? That's not important. Blake was a dark-featured, rather short individual that had a moody personality about him and didn't like to speak up for whatever reason. And the mystery intrigued me.
Tell me about it.
I could not turn away. He was one of those aloof, and I'm realizing now, emotionally disconnected individuals, but at the time, extremely aloof, just didn't care about girls, and that was like an immediate hook, line, and sinker for me because I like a bit of a challenge. I like a little bit of a conquest, if you will.
Absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. There's something about someone you can't quite figure out.
Yeah, and I'm realizing now that it was complete emotional
Right.
disconnection. But
Yeah.
at the time, it was a turn on for my second grade self. So
Yeah. That's awesome. How did you come to be a sex and intimacy coach? What has your journey around that been like?
yeah, it's really been a process of just coming back home to the things that naturally gravitate me, that I naturally magnetize to. And I was kind of the girl in elementary school and high school and college that was always getting in trouble for boys, that was always getting in trouble for being just very sexually expressed. And in the world that we live in, it's not always a safe place for women to do that. And now that I've really come into my own as a woman, and I feel so confident in who I am and happy with who I am, and in a relationship where I have the freedom that I need to be able to be self-expressed, it's really just taking ownership of all of those parts of me that have always been there, and helping other women and helping other couples to create a dynamic of just safety and self-expression where they can talk about their needs and desires and bring them out into the world and have a really fucking fun time doing it. So it's kind of been an evolutionary process.
I love hearing that so much, especially because I feel like we just need to be acknowledging sex as a realm of self-expression. Because it is. It is. It is a place where we express ourselves, and it is a space where we enact different things and different fantasies and different parts of ourselves. And it's dynamic and it shifts and that's so awesome. That's
It's so good. Doesn't it
so
make you happy to talk about, though? This is the thing, too, is like, especially women, when you get us together and we have drinks together, this is the shit that we love to talk about. And it's because we don't have the space anywhere else to talk about it. And it's part of who we are as like our energetic code as women. We are just these creative, desirous beings. And I really want to reverse the stigma around desire being something that is shameful. Like that's that puts you in such a box, and it's just it's not fair.
Yeah. And it's also just such a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful thing. Women being turned on. I'm so into it. I'm into it in myself. I'm into it with other women. I'm like, yes, more of that, please. And like also this ridiculous narrative that apparently we all absorbed to some extent, that women don't want to have sex as much as men do. It's like, where did that come from? Who started that?
I think it has a lot to do with the powers that be really recognizing that sexual expression is a form of empowerment. It's a form of creative energy. And when women harness that, they're unstoppable. Think about how much shame there is. Think about how much stigma there is around being self-expressed in your sexuality. And also consider that that's super fucking intentional. Like that is super intentional. And there's actually been a shitload of research that's been done that shows that men and women have equal levels of desire. They have equal libidos in terms of how much they want sex, how often they want it. And it has more to do with, I believe it has more to do with women not feeling safe to speak up their desires and needing novelty and needing adventure and needing freedom and newness, and not feeling safe within the context of a relationship, no matter how long it's been existing, to really speak those into reality without making the partner feel insignificant or emasculated.
Yeah, that is such a good point, because I feel like so much of the messaging growing up was prioritizing the male experience sexually. Your job is to be pleasing. Your job is to, be performative, to make sure he has a good time. And also recognizing that female sexuality expresses itself differently than male sexuality. And obviously, we're speaking in very gendered terms here. And like when we talk about what is masculine, what is feminine, like there's many, many different expressions for what that is, who identifies with which, right? To speak generally here, to kind of like simplify the concepts, female sexuality, it's expressed differently than male sexuality. And then there's, there's a lot of nuance, and there's a lot of warming up that needs to occur. And it's just like, it's a different thing. So of course, if we're putting women in a box and we're saying sexuality is this traditionally masculine thing, and here's what it's supposed to look like, and here's how it is, it's like that is not inclusive to the entire spectrum of sexuality. So yes, I love what you're saying.
I want to expand on that a little bit more, because when we're talking about specifically turning your body on, it starts in a very different place for men and for women. For men are more visually inclined to be turned on by what they see and what they experience through senses, right? Women are turned on intellectually. We're turned on by our minds. We're turned on by the experience. We're turned
on the imagination of it.
The imagination, the storytelling, which is like a perfect, eventually we can talk about this with sexting, but this is exactly the turn on of women is, sure, we're visual creatures and we're drawn to certain things visually. And if you have a type that you're typically attracted to, this is when you'll see that. And we love the story. We love the curiosity. We love being drawn down a road and painted this picture of this experience that we're going to have. Like, it begins in the mind for women. And that's kind of the mind-body connection with being turned on. And so many women are like, what's wrong with me? I can't get turned on in bed very quickly, or it takes me a while to warm up. And it's like, well, yeah, your mind hasn't been stimulated. You can't expect your body to just snap into place and like be ready to go. It starts.
You got to turn on the erotic imagination.
Yes. The internal playground of your mind.
Yeah, that's so funny. As you were saying that, I was realizing I have totally watched porn before just for the storytelling at the beginning and then turned it off and been like, well, I can take it from here.
Oh, porn without a storyline pisses me off. My boyfriend, my fiance, I need to stop saying that. He gets so pissed off. He's like, just enjoy it. I'm like, but there's no story.
It's like, I'm not into this because I'm not sold in with my imagination, with my erotic imagination.
Yep.
Yeah. Seduce my mind.
Seduce my mind and you will have my body.
Yes. I was also thinking, as we were talking about the different layers of shame for women around being sexual and being sexually expressed, there is this tension and, kind of second wave feminism. I think I'm getting that right, where, there's shame between women of being sexually expressed, or that is somehow disempowering, and that comes into tension, that comes into play with a long history of sexual objectification. But how fucking powerful is it to reclaim that for yourself and say, it's another form of oppression. It's another form of tailoring yourself or contorting yourself to appeal to men or, appeal to society. If you are not expressing yourself sexually because you're afraid of what people are going to think of that, right? That's just another way you're giving away your power.
And it really just is the societal narrative that we have around sexuality in general, of it being this dirty, sinful thing. Like, there's still a lot of that, for lack of a better word, like Christian roots to what sexuality means.
The Puritans who founded the country.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. There is that puritanical root to sexuality being something dark and hidden and sinful, for lack of a better word. But if you think about it, if we just look at this through the lens of expression, of expressing who you are as a person, as a woman, as a human being on this planet, sexuality just becomes a version of your self-expression, in the same way that speaking what you care about your values, about your inspiration, in the same way that acting artistically, in the same way that maybe singing or having a passion or a hobby, it's the same form of self-expression. It's just all the added layers of gunk that we have on top of sexuality that makes it something shameful. And the whole thing you were speaking about with slut shaming and with all of the other words that we use to degrade a woman's sexuality in particular, since those words are used towards women typically, it really just comes from fear of identifying, of being identified that which is already socially stigmatized.
Mm-hmm. As you were saying, sexual expression, I believe so strongly that part of the foundation of a healthy relationship is that both people are sexually expressed within and with like outside of the relationship too. So that you're not basically counting exclusively on your partner to be the only place in which you express yourself sexually. And that gets to look like a lot of things, right? Like, even if you're in a monogamous relationship, you're not having sex with other people or getting sexual outside of your relationship, you can still express your sexuality and how you dress and how you dance and how you talk about sex, and like letting that part of yourself, that sexual, sensual part of yourself be online in all areas of your life, or, the areas of your life that feel good and safe to you, not just, oh, this is only a part of me that comes online when my partner is present. No wonder you're having a shitty time. That's so much pressure. And it's also like,
And it's also really sad because we get so much joy. We get so much joy from expressing our sexuality when you come to a place of being really grounded in what you want and the fact that pleasure is your birthright. Like when you come into that knowing, it feels fun. It feels good to express your sexuality in all areas of your life. And there's a way to do it in varying degrees based on the set and setting. But there's no reason why you have to keep it behind closed doors and on a chain, only to be revealed to certain people during certain times. Like, that's so sad.
Yeah, it's again, it's really taking ownership of my sexuality is my own, and I may choose to share that physically with one person. I may, or whatever you choose. It may be multiple people. Awesome. Whatever that is, it's still yours, and you can express it as much as you would like to in all different kinds of ways. And not just in the physical sense. And I think even within relationships too, like recognizing, I can't remember who said this, but I always remembered it. Foreplay begins when you've just finished having sex, right? Yeah. Or like the seduction, or like being sexual with each other. It's not relegated to just having intercourse. Whatsoever. And if it is, that's a problem. That's a problem, right? Because you're not, and especially for women where, or female sexuality, where it's so much in the anticipation and the buildup and the narrative, right? The erotic imagination, to allow that part of ourselves and like that way of connecting and relating to each other to expand far beyond just physical intercourse. Right? Where it's like these moments that you have, like out in public, where you like have this little secret sexy moment, or, you're expressing sexual interest. You're always flirting with each other. Right. And that's like honestly one of the best pieces of relationship advice I've ever heard for like long-term relationships is never stop flirting with each other.
Never stop flirting.
Never stop.
And this is a great conversation around the power of sexual energy. And what I'm talking about is you can have that connection, you can have that literal sex energy without having intercourse, without having any sort of like physical contact with somebody. And what that does is it deepens your intimacy, it deepens your emotional connection, it adds so much fun and flair into your relationship, it adds that novelty, and it allows you to just see the world as your playground when it comes to enjoyment and just pleasure. And this is the human experience, right? We're not here to have a shitty time. We're here to have a really fun time.
Yeah.
So when you can bring this into all facets of your life, you're just increasing the experience of being a human, and why the hell not?
Yeah. And what it means to be a sexual being who expresses themselves. Yeah, absolutely. So let's move into sexting. You mentioned you have some data around sexting. I would love to hear that.
Yeah. So one of the most fun pieces of data that I found, it's come out of Drexel University. I can't remember the exact researcher who produced it, but they did basically a comparative study where they looked at people of all different ages, and they introduced sexting. They introduced this ability to test how sexting impacts their relationship, the way that they are satisfied, also the way that they view sexting, and kind of how long the couple has been together, what value it adds to the relationship. And what they found is that for people that were in relationships, that were in committed relationships especially, this was the strongest correlation for people that were in committed relationships. But those who sexed frequently in their relationships have an 80% increased rate of satisfaction in the relationship in general, not just in their sex life.
No way.
In general.
Wow.
As the relationship as a whole.
That is what we call a piece of friggin' data.
That is a big ass piece of significant
That is a big ass piece of data. Wow. Yeah. That's 80% in the entire holistic relationship satisfaction. That is so cool. That is so cool to know.
Yeah. And what this really highlights is that sexting isn't just about getting turned on. It's not just about sending provocative photos. It's not just about sending provocative video. Sure, that's fun. And that's the context of it, right? But it also adds intimacy and connection to your relationship, which is the thing that builds long-term, meaningful, partnerships that everybody is kind of craving and longing.
And it's that novelty you're talking about of like bringing in that excitement. And I feel like sexting is even more relevant now, during pandemic times, because as people are dating, maybe they're, building a new relationship, whatever it might be, the timelines are slower right now, or you may be across the country from someone or across the world or whatever it might be. But suffice it to say, with that big ass piece of data and the current circumstances, this is such a relevant topic.
Yeah, massively. And it's a conversation that, a lot of people definitely aren't talking about because, again, there's so much, it's so shrouded in negatives.
One of the fears around sexting is shit getting leaked, right? Like lack of trust, and how, that happens to a lot of people, especially women, is their nudes get leaked or whatever. And that fucking sucks. So I feel like when we talk about sexting, that is often the conversation, is the public shaming and, the betrayal of trust that can happen, and can happen very publicly.
For sure. And this is kind of where how you set up the relationship is super important, how you filter who you're going to engage this way in, and why it's really important to have that foundation of trust and to have these kind of preliminary conversations before you get into this type of relationship with somebody, especially if it's a newer forming relationship. This is where like those nuances come in that you were kind of talking about in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. So for our fledgling sexters, what's a way to know, first of all, that you have consent to start and like bringing that into the dynamic? And what are also some best practices for establishing trust or like feeling comfortable yourself?
So where I would start first and foremost is actually establishing trust first. So when you're, if you're in a dating app, or if you've met somebody new and you're in this kind of forming, budding relationship, right? What I would really recommend is just asking for that consent. It doesn't have to be awkward. It doesn't have to be gangly. It doesn't have to be anything that is unsexy. Asking for consent can be sexy. And it can be something that is as simple as, hey, I've really been enjoying getting to know you. Have you ever sexted before? Have you ever had that type of a conversation with somebody before? Just asking, like, is this something that you've done before? Are you interested in it? And just say, hey, like, I've been feeling really connected to you. I would love to kind of add a little bit of flirtiness and sexiness into our relationship. Is that something that you're interested in? It can literally be that simple.
Yeah, that's the thing. Every single time with communication, it's like, it's actually super fucking easy. We just make it hard because of the fear that comes up, right? The fear of rejection, the fear of whatever, or, the fear that if we're so direct, it'll, kill the subtlety or whatever it might be. And like, of course there is such sexiness and like subtlety and illusion. And I always say to clients that flirtation exists in the energy of the maybe, right? So like, of course, and you can make it fucking sexy, right? Because you're inviting, and what I teach with flirtation too is like what you're doing is you're breaking rapport a lot of the time, and breaking rapport creates tension. That's why we call it sexual tension. And like a way to create tension is to be fucking direct, right? Because they might be like, whoa, okay. Like, I guess I can't be evasive. What was his name? Blake. I guess I can't pull a Blake here and like be really like, I don't give a shit, right? Because this person is asking me up front. It's such a bold move. And I think we're both pretty into bold moves.
Very into bold moves. And this is where the conversation, the second part of that question comes in around how do you establish confidence within yourself to do that? And what I really believe is like one of the pillars of confidence is just owning your desires, owning them to be worthy and valuable, and knowing that you are deserving of having those desires come to light. That doesn't necessarily mean having arrogance around getting what you want, but having the rooted self-worth that this desire I have, it's not dirty, it's not wrong, it's not shameful. Like it's part of me. It's part of what I am, part of who I am. And I get to own that.
To that point, another fear that might come up around this and just comes up around sexual desire in general is being weird or having weird desires, or like, is this normal? Is this okay? So let's just get this out there once and for all. There is no normal when it comes to sex. There is no normal. And that's the problem with not talking about it enough, is that everyone's wondering, like, am I doing it right? Is this weird? Is this okay? Like, what are other people doing? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, bro, or, not bro, whoever, ma'am. There is no normal when it comes to sexuality. So you can let go of that limiting belief right here, right now.
Right here, right now. Yeah. And it really gets to be that simple. And the thing that you're establishing when you are that straightforward and when you are that genuine about asking, are you okay with this? What you're doing is you're opening up that stream of communication for deeper, perhaps more challenging conversations around sexuality that are inevitably going to happen in the future. Because what we don't want to have happen is we don't want there to be this like barrier of, I'm afraid to just ask for what you need because I want to look like the expert, like the sexy, like I know everything there is to know about sex. Like we don't want to appear as if we know everything that person wants and needs, because that creates a huge divide between you and creating an experience together, co-creating that experience together. That is exactly what each of you wants and needs.
Absolutely. And there's where I think this story around verbal communication is not sexy is just so completely whack. And of course, in sex, we're communicating non-verbally. Of course we are. Of course, in relationships, we're communicating non-verbally, right? Like there's so many forms of communication. Verbal communication is only one, but it's pretty fucking effective. So if you can utilize that to make sure you're both satisfied and do that in a fun, direct, like sexy way, like we need to do this more. We need to communicate verbally more around sex. And that also, to your point, sets up this culture in the relationship, this dynamic within the relationship where you're establishing that it's okay to ask for what you want and need about anything, right? And if you're the one to take the lead, you are implicitly setting the stage for the other person to feel comfortable stepping forward and be like, hey, here's what I want and need, right? And also there might be something that someone wants to do sexually that you absolutely don't want to do, right? And like, it's cool to have boundaries around whatever you want to have boundaries around, right? And also, how are we approaching all of this from a place of play and a place of exploration and a place of genuinely wanting to please each other?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so if we're circling this all back to how do you establish that relationship from the beginning, it begins with just asking straight up, like, hey, this has been on my mind. I'm really digging our relationship. I've really been having a fun time getting to know you. Are you interested in trying this? That's where you start. You ask, are you interested in trying this? You get consent there. Yeah. From that place moving forward, you create the dynamic together. It's important that you ask for details like, okay, when do you not want to receive stuff? When are you okay receiving things? Because if somebody's at work and they're uncomfortable opening content like that at work, I mean, given the climate, we have no idea who's actually in an office right now, right? But these types of questions are really important. Like, are you okay receiving them like when you're home at night? Are you okay receiving them throughout the day? Like really getting to know. It's the same with physical contact, right? You don't have the opportunity to pick up on these signs and signals when you're apart from each other. So opening that line of communication is the thing that gets you really clear on what that person wants, what they need. And you can move forward into, flirty text messages and flirty photos. And then once that becomes established, do you want to go a little bit deeper with this? Do you want to establish a little bit more like risque? Like, where do you want to go with this? So it's really just about like building and building and building and building slowly and checking in throughout the process. Yeah. And it can be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And also recognizing that a way to communicate about this or, anything sexual or like, honestly, like anything in the relationship building or like established relationship too, it's offering what you want and allowing the space for them to express how they feel about what you want and how they feel in turn, right? So like it can be in the form of a question. It can be in the form of like, hey, I would be really into this.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting it out there. I mean, that's a verbal communication, right? It's a bit of a different feel, right? And you can do both. You can do both and more. Yeah. And as you get to know each other better, it's like you understand, you hit a rhythm in your communication, and like you understand and you establish the dynamic more and more so that you can intuit moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think just not positioning yourself as somebody that has all the answers for fear of looking inexperienced is really important. And just showing up as you are with the intention. I mean, think about it. The intention is to build connection. It's to build intrigue. It's to build that chemistry. It's all about adding to the relationship. So you being afraid of, well, what are they going to think of me? Are they going to think I'm silly? Are they going to think I'm weird? Those are the fears that are going to get in between you and connecting that intimacy that you're actually truly craving through like a sexting relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, don't fucking shame people about their sexual desires and preferences.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really vulnerable thing. Even if you're not into something, like don't fucking shame people about that. It's very vulnerable and that shit can go really deep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that comes from a place of shame within yourself too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So what are some kind of general tips, general understanding for the fledgling sexters?
Ooh, fun. So set and setting, perhaps the most important component when you're first starting.
Love it. Set and setting. I just watched that documentary, Have a Good Trip, on Netflix. Did you watch that?
Yeah.
Do you remember the part when like Sting did peyote at like 10 a.m. and then like birthed a calf on his farm in England? That was insane.
He's a crazy person. He also has like the 10-hour sexcapades, right? This is Sting. Yeah.
Really?
Sting also has like the 10-hour sexcapades with his partners. So he's just a whole animal in and of
He's
himself.
living it up.
He is living his best life. So yeah, set and settings, super important. So the environment that you're in, making sure that you feel comfortable and safe and also, turned on by where you are. So when you're taking, let's say we're using photos and videos, like something more visual, and we can talk about text and audio later if you want to, but when you're talking about the visual component, making the setting around you something that you feel comfortable in, but also that the person you're sending this content to wants to be in. So it's like, don't have like your boxers and like your shoes and everything laying around, where if you were to have somebody over and you were to have them in this like super sexy, intimate environment, you probably wouldn't have your site.
It's a seduction. It's a seduction. It happens to be digital.
Yeah, exactly. So it's creating the environment around you to be something you feel sexy in and the person receiving the content wants to be a part of. You're creating this entire experience. And the rest of it has to do with, how do you feel? What's the energy you're conveying through the content that you're sending? If you are unenthused and you feel insecure, that's going to come across in your photos. So it has a lot to do with like mindset too. Like when you're sending a photo, what are you trying to convey? Is it like more of a like, come hither type of energy, or is it like, look at me, I'm the shit, like look at this hot bod? Like, is it, you get to convey a specific energy through your body language, through your facial expression, through the environment that you're sending that photo through. So those are kind of like the set and setting component is pretty foundational, but super, super important.
Yeah, I love that. So in terms of, you mentioned obviously photo, video, audio. I'm a huge fan of audio messages of all sorts, especially actually for women, as you were saying. Like for men, visual is more of a turn on. For women, it's the storytelling, it's the imagination. And again, like there's an entire spectrum of sexuality. So I don't want to say like all women are like this, right? But like the general understanding, a good general understanding is that women are more turned on by the storytelling, the imaginative, the sensual experience, the voice, right?
Yes, absolutely. And there was something that you hit on that I wanted to talk about. And I think it was the audio with men in particular is when, especially in more of established relationships, the sound of a woman's voice and hearing her enthusiasm and hearing her inflection and hearing her say certain things and change the volume and tone of her voice. that elicits a chemical reaction in a man's body. It triggers dopamine, it triggers all of these positive neurochemicals that create more connection, that create more intimacy within the experience of the man, where he feels more bonded to you. So like the audio messaging is so fun, so fun. And this is where the storytelling really gets to come in, is you get to, say, oh, I just got home and I've been thinking about you all day. You get to paint this whole experience where they feel as if they're with you.
I love that. Can I just get a recording of you sending like breathy voice memo?
What was the other component? Oh, I wanted to talk a little bit about storytelling for women versus the visual for men too. And this is kind of where, when you're setting up that relationship, or if you've been in a longer term relationship, women have a tendency to get really frustrated when men don't storytell enough. They're like, oh my God, he's just not giving me anything. And men tend to get really frustrated when they ask for more, and women are like, maybe. And it's like, yeah, you're flirting, but they're probably pissed off because you asked for more. So there's this clash that can happen sometimes. And I feel like that's a great place to dive into too, if that's something you're interested in.
Absolutely. That's super relevant.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So I think really what this comes down to is asking for what you want. And it, in the context of more of an established relationship, it's explaining and enticing that person with your desire, with what you want. So in the instance of storytelling, if it was a
right,
woman,
it would be like, tell me more about blah, blah, blah. So what's happening with XYZ, right? Like setting up the home run, if you will.
Yeah, set up the home run and explain why you want what you want. It's like, it really turns me on when I hear about what you're going to do, X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. Like, acknowledge him, validate him, tell him why you're asking for what you're wanting, instead of, it might come off that you're unsatisfied or that you're unhappy. So instead, make it flirty, make it fun, make it sexy, and say,
make it inviting.
Yeah, inviting, make it a huge turn on to be like, this is why I love when you tell these types of stories, or this type of sex, or this type of photo. Like, this is what really gets me going.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Just like you would want to know, you would want someone to tell you what they're into, and recognize that people want to please you. They want to turn you on. If they don't have sex with them, right? That's a problem if they don't, right? But like, you can set someone up for success by just like really being vocal and owning what you're into and what you want, and recognize that, like, even within sex, so much of being into it is feeling attractive. And it's not just feeling attracted, it's feeling attractive. And there's a positive feedback loop between those, because when we feel attractive, right? Like, what makes us feel attractive is when we feel like we have prowess, or we feel like we're turning someone on, or we feel like they're really into us. That makes us feel more sexually turned on, more attracted, because we feel sexy.
Mm-hmm. And what you're hitting on right now is something that so many women inevitably encounter in relationships, where they get to a point where they feel perhaps insecure in their body, or less confident in their body, or they don't feel sexy anymore because their relationship has been 2, 3, 4, 5, however many years. And their partner is always telling them, you're so sexy, you're so beautiful. But the novelty of it, coming from somebody that is maybe a passerby on the street, or a friend telling you, like, damn girl, you look good, you are sexy as fuck, knowing that it's coming from a place of genuine turn on, rather than your partner like just trying to validate you and making you feel good. This is something that so many women encounter. Mm-hmm. And really what sexting allows you to do is to kind of like get yourself out of the typical dynamic of the relationship. Yeah. And to add in that novelty that maybe they haven't seen before, and get a genuine, authentic first experience reaction from them. Add spunk right back into your step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And a piece of dating advice I give to everyone, and then, I say this to my male clients a lot, is like, never stop expressing your attraction to someone. Because again, it's about them feeling attractive. And like, if you are their primary sexual partner or their only sexual partner, it's like, that is where someone is getting that connection in that way. So step up and recognize that, like, just like you want to feel reminded that someone finds you attractive, do that shit for the other person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Validation within the relationship is acknowledgement and validation is so important.
And appreciation. Awesome. So what might be some tips for men specifically, and then maybe some tips for women specifically, and then anything that falls outside of kind of like the heteronormative that we can think of that is universal, and also just, acknowledging that we're both fairly straight. Actually, I don't know. I'm kind of bi. What's your deal?
I'm pretty fluid too.
Yeah, I'm like kind of fluid, but I mostly have had sex with men. Mostly, yeah.
I feel like millennials in general, we're a pretty fluid flock. So
yeah, we are a fluid flock. Yeah, so maybe integrating some fluidity into that as well would be awesome for any fluid listeners.
Amazing. Okay, so let's start with men, and you might have to remind me about all the different components of this final question. Okay. All right.
Yes, that was a multifaceted question.
Yes. So with men, like I was saying earlier, women are turned on intellectually. We're turned on by the story. We're turned on by the imagination, the creativity. And this doesn't mean that you have to become a fucking novelist and write like fantasy porn. No, it just means engaging in storytelling, like being willing to send a dynamic message, a dynamic photo, a dynamic video that leaves some intrigue, that makes her hang on the edge of her seat, because that's what women need to get turned on and open up. And it's only going to allow both of you to really reveal desires, needs, and wants more. So for men, it's like, know that storytelling is super important, and finesse your words a little bit. It can help a lot to be more creative rather than blunt at times, rather than just show me your tits.
Right. You want to create a sensual experience. Yes. A sensual experience. So like, even if you can bring in words that like call a certain like feeling or like scent or texture or sound or whatever to mind, like the more that you can evoke sensory experience with your language, mm-hmm. you're onto something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And ask questions. This can be part of the sexting conversation, is tell me about what turns you on. Tell me about a fantasy that you've had lately, and use that. She's giving you a blueprint. Literally use that. Make it that simple for yourself. It doesn't have to be hard. So that would be my biggest tip for men, is just to engage in the storytelling and get curious about her desires, her fantasies, her turn-ons, things that she loves. If she loves going, I don't know, maybe there's like a bar around the corner from where you live. Maybe you paint a picture of you two having a sexy moment in the bar together, because that's part of her reality, and that's going to get her imagination going. And then the second part was for women, right?
For women, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's really just acknowledging the counterpart to this is like, men are more visual creatures. They don't need as much of the storytelling because they're turned on in a different way than women are. And so it's kind of this like back and forth conversation you get to have about, what parts of a woman really turn you on, or what do you love about my eyes, or what do you love about different parts of the way that I present myself, right? Asking these questions and play on that, use that. And you don't have to send these like big bang full body photos. Tease a little bit, lead a little bit.
Yeah, you got to have something to build up to.
Yeah, build up. The build up is what is going to get him going like crazy. And also be very aware that if you do send those like those banger photos right off the bat, you're going to leave him a little miserable. So you don't need to be cruel necessarily. And use the buildup. You can send a sexy neck, shoulder, decolleté photo. You can send a sexy like biting your lip photo. Warm the things up and get the interaction built first. And that also leaves you opportunity to get creative in the future too.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I've told you that I moonlight as a burlesque performer. I think I do. Yeah. So the biggest thing I've learned from burlesque is like, I mean, it's the art of the tease, right? Like it's the art of anticipation and like the slow reveal, right? Like it doesn't work if you, I mean, you can do whatever the fuck you want.
You come out in a robe and just drop it.
You can do whatever the fuck you want. Right. Right. But like the art of the tease is like, the nudity, the full frontal nudity is occurring at the end of the performance, right? Because we're building up to it, and it's like, oh, you think I'm gonna, oh, not yet, right? Or, oh, you think I'm gonna, no, not yet. Also, that is something that you would fucking love.
It's in my soul. Like I'm pretty sure it's in my blood at this point. I was some kind of stripper goddess in the past, and burlesque is just like the thing that's been calling to me for 10 years, and I just, need to do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Burlesquers of TikTok. Yeah, I've seen some of your dance videos on TikTok. Amazing. Okay, so what are some just kind of like generalized tips for everyone that they can kind of like pick and choose? Like, what are some other like a la carte techniques that might appeal to anyone?
I think mixed media is really fun and is something that can apply to anyone. And you can even bring in different social media platforms with this. You can use Snapchat for kind of the temporary intrigue of it, where it's like, it's going away, you're only going to get to watch this twice. That's something that's super simple and relatively low risk to get into. So Snapchat is something you can use. Like using Instagram is something that's out there. What I love doing is I love using TikTok for creating these experiences with lights and music and emotion. And you can actually use those videos and send them too. So if you're already on these platforms, you can create private content for yourself to use. And that's a very fun way to add in platforms that we're already using in a new, fun, sexy way. So they just become even more multidimensional. But I think the mixed media, I really think the mixed media, like using a combination, like use everything that's available to you. Video, photo, Snapchat, audio files are great.
Mm-hmm.
Texting, just the OG texting is great too. I think just playing with everything that you have and going towards what you feel called to too. It's like gravitating towards what just sounds like fun and letting fun be the leading foot forward with any sexting conversation that you ever have.
Absolutely. And what's also so evident in what you said is how much of an art form this is. And
it is an art form.
That's what we're talking about when we talk about personal expression, right? It's an art form. It's an artistic expression. And as you were saying, just like we would sing or how we dress or whatever, like how we sext. It's an art form. Yes, the mixed media, or I'm thinking about, just like the art world, it's like new media sexting. Yes, this piece was done with mixed media. I brought in a little bit of
this piece
wax.
was inspired by a banana sandwich I ate earlier.
Exactly. And like, honestly, that would be a fun thing to bring into sexting, is just like fucking with that trope, right? Like you can do whatever the fuck you want.
Let your personality shine.
Yeah.
Let your personality shine is like, let fun be the leading foot forward for sure. And you don't have to be the temptress. You don't have to be the dress to the nines seductress. You get to be the silly, flirty person that you are. You get to be goofy. Like there's no stamp of approval for what sexting is and isn't. It's you. It's who you are. It's an expression of who you are. So let it be unique and individual.
Awesome. What a excellent mic drop to end this on. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tristan. There are so many relevant, very tactical, and also super interesting conceptual things we touched on. This is really fun. Where can people find you? Where can they find your sexy TikTok videos?
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram at Tristan_Thibodeau_. I'm pretty sure you'll find me right away when you search Tristan. That's my name on all of their social media platforms, except for my TikTok, which is the Bad Kitty Room, because why not? And if you want to get a taste of how you can play with these different energies and make it an art form, that's really kind of where all of that content lives for me.
Hell yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much, Tristan. Go check her shit out. You're going to love it.
Thank you so much, Cora.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Pillow Talk Radio. I'm Cora Boyd, and make sure to subscribe so we can keep you in the loop. In the interim, you can find me on Instagram at @the Cora Boyd, YouTube Cora Boyd, website coreavoidcoaching.com. Have an excellent rest of your day, night, morning, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, and we'll catch you next week.